Representative Gail McCann Beatty, the House Minority Leader. So let's kind of talk about, we have completed our first half of our session for 2018. I would say it probably has not been exceptionally productive. In terms of some of the wins for our caucus, I think the failure to pass the police dog bill was a big win for us. You will notice that today we did not third read the SNAP bill. I filed a challenge for the fiscal note, and so that has been delayed. And finally, we're excited about the candidates that we've recruited as we go into this election cycle. We are very optimistic, particularly with the addition of Representative Mike Revis. I think that is some indication of things to come. For the second half, we are hopeful that we can look at a real PDMP program. I have filed the fair housing fix, so hopefully we will get an opportunity to see that, what has been heard in the Senate. And then we have, I believe Representative Carpenter has filed a repeal of SB 24, as well as Representative Mitten has filed a repeal for SB 43. With that, I'm going to ask Representative Lavender, Representative Quaid, and Representative Kendrick to talk to you a little bit about the budget process that just finished up last night.
Thank you. I'm Deb Lavender, District 90. We had a long day in budget yesterday, as a lot of you know. We're disappointed. In September of last year, the Republicans promised us that within 3 weeks, we were going to have solutions for our seniors and people who live with disabilities, a solution for them to be able to stay in their homes with a little bit of health care and to provide better care in our nursing homes. Last night in budget, the only amendments that came up were Democrat amendments to attempt to restore funding for those lines, and they were all voted down. There was not a single proposal from the Republicans last night in how we were going to restore funding for nursing homes or for people living with disabilities to have a little bit of help in their homes. So we were disappointed in how that budget worked out for us last night.
Thank you. Representative Crystal Quaid, District 132. I would just like to echo what Representative Lavender said. Those of you in this room know that last year we spent a long time in both the House and Senate working around House Committee Bill 3, which the governor ended up vetoing the final passage of that bill, but that would have restored cuts to in-home nursing services for folks with disabilities and low-income seniors, as well as provider rate cuts. And as Representative Lavender said, we discussed that even at veto session, and we were promised a deadline, and it wasn't discussed at all yesterday. We spent 11 hours in that room, and it never came up once. I am hoping that the majority party is not trying to forget that that was such a serious conversation and that we still have folks suffering every single day. And that's not to mention the cuts we saw to the MoRx program as well as the consumer-directed services programs. And it is very disappointing, as Representative Lavender said, that we didn't even discuss it yesterday. Thanks.
I'll speak more broadly about the budget. I think Representative Lavender and Representative Quaid spoke about some of the frustrations regarding cuts that were made last year to individuals with disabilities, for seniors as well. There were a tremendous amount of cuts to public higher education as well that were made last year in the budget. Well over $100 million out, a significant amount of money withheld day one of this year's budget. And this is continues to be an ongoing issue. Economy is doing fairly well. Unemployment's low. Economic indicators are fairly good for the state of Missouri. And we are here again in another year where we're trying to do all that we can to make the least worst situation possible for higher education in the state of Missouri, as well as the least worst situation possible for people with disabilities, for seniors. And we need to look at the broader picture on some tax policy that was passed back in 2014 and subsequent years as well, that's put us in a difficult position on growing general revenue in the state. It continues to be a problem. As we budget for FY19, we are planning on a second-year phase-in, a 5-year phase-in of Senate Bill 509 from 2014. that was a major tax cut that had no offsets, that is going to continue to bleed general revenue. Again, it represents 40% of all general revenue growth that we expect in the 2019 fiscal year. That's a significant amount of the general revenue we're expecting to grow. So, you know, the cuts that we've had to make over the last decade have put many Missourians in a difficult position, and it is it's an issue that where we're no longer, you know, cutting fat from the budget, we're cutting into muscle, we're cutting priorities for the state, for the people of Missouri. That being said, I believe that we're considering everything in the budgeting process for this year. We feel fairly decent about kind of the ability to restore most of the money to public higher education this year. There's been some good attempts on both sides of the aisle to put more money into K-12 funding, foundation formula. We're going to need to continue to make sure that we can address the shortfall in funding for higher education as it moves to the Senate, while also protecting the Missouri Access Program. For the first time in history of that program, it has received full funding, and that's an important program. It's a need-based scholarship program. I know many people on the Democratic Caucus are supportive of that idea. We just need to make sure we can find additional money for higher education as we move to the Senate, and make sure that we can make certain that higher education remains affordable and accessible for all Missourians.
Okay, with that, we'll take questions.
Was there any indication from any of the Republican budget leaders that they would want to tackle the in-home health care question in a separate bill that's not part of the FY19 budget?
No.
Nothing.
It doesn't seem like there are as many cuts to seniors and disabled as there were last year. Is that because they were all cut last year?
Yes, there aren't as many cuts because there was nothing restored. So, yeah.
Last year, the figure was, I think, 8,000, and then when we got to the veto session, it was much lower. That's where it took some of the steam out. Do we have an idea how many people are impacted by those cuts?
So far, it's been in the 10 to 15% of people who haven't requalified. We have a bill addressing this year. There's a requirement standard, and what the difference was is it's much more, it has subjectivity in it. So it was qualifying for 4 points instead of 21. When the 21 came for reassessment, they qualified at 24. So those we thought we were dropping off were put on at a higher level. That was a large part of our supplemental. So yes, we can say those people have been re-included. We have a bill on our side that addresses how we would go about addressing how people are assessed. But the other egregious thing that we did was we cut consumer-directed services to 60%. That's what we did that I don't hear anybody talking about, and those are the cuts we truly need to look at restoring.
Leader Beatty, I was in the Ways and Means Committee this week, the last 2 weeks, and the circuit breaker dominated the attention on the pro tempore tax cut bill. Brandon Ellington and Richard Brown had an amendment to protect it for renters. It was voted down 6-3. A, your thoughts on the PAR bill, the tax cut, but B, the circuit breaker, which Ellington said he would have voted to send it to the floor if his amendment passed. It did not. Your thoughts on that?
You know, as Representative Kendrick said, we're no longer cutting fat, we're down to the muscle. And any tax cut that we have at this point, it's a question of what are we giving up in return? And are we going to balance our budget then on the backs of our most vulnerable? And I think that's what we're seeing in this tax cut bill.
Slightly different tack. What's your impression of the people chosen for the investigative committee and how that overall process has been?
We would have liked to have seen a better balance. We were originally told it was going to be a 2-3 committee. That didn't happen. It turned out to be a 2-5. We're putting a lot of trust and faith in Representative Barnes that he is going to handle this appropriately and fairly.
And so far, what do you think so far? Especially with the lack of details and transparency.
Quite frankly, I don't have a lot of information because I am shut out just like everyone else. I understand why some of that needed to happen, but, you know, there is a level of concern that more of this is not out into the open. Representative Barnes, their press conference, was that yesterday, which he says there's going to be a transcript, but I don't know how quickly that transcript will come out, nor how much will actually be released. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that.
As evidence that the problems with the governor are not a distraction, the speaker said that they have passed so far in this first half 158 bills. Does that walk with you?
Passed 158 bills, and I believe one bill has actually gone through both sides. And to say that it hasn't been a distraction, I think it's a constant distraction. I mean, you can't hardly go a day without some kind of article. I met with the Consulate General of Canada this week, and that was the topic of conversation of, you know, what's going on with our governor. And unfortunately, the similarities between that and what's going on the federal level. So I would disagree that this is not a distraction.
What do you hope to accomplish during the second half? What do you think is possible for the Democratic caucus to get done?
Well, I listed some of those, but I think it's important that we fix, if we can't repeal SB 43, that we at least fix the portion of that is taking the housing funding. We've lost about $500,000 as a result of that, and I think that's something I think both sides have some interest in. I would like to see us move forward with the PDMP. I think we got really close with that last year with bipartisan support, and because the governor has issued this executive order, but it's not a true PDMP, and but I think what Representative Rader had, along with Representative Wessels, was a good bill that we need to move forward with.
Leader Beatty, one more question. Is there anything new on the UMKC conservatory building? Have you heard anything new on that, or what's the latest on that?
We're still there looking at some sources of funding and where to go. They have not given me any specific details on that as of yet. Okay, is that it? All right, thank you.